Don't tell people you're leaving, okay? I won't. About 10 years ago, during my first full-time job out of college, I had a boss who decided she hated me. I'm not completely sure why, but she would go out of her way to make my life miserable. Demoted me to an overnight shift but wouldn't give me a reason, changed my shift around on a whim without notice. Once changed my schedule for the next day after I had left without telling me, then wrote me up when I didn't show up on time. Stuff like that. She was a monster. So, I was looking for another job. Well, I found one, and I went in to give her my 2 weeks' notice. This happened to be in the middle of a mass exodus for the company, as I was the 5th person to quit over the course of about 3 to 4 weeks. Morale was very low, and whenever anyone quit, she would buy pizza for everyone instead of addressing why the place was so miserable and people were leaving. After I gave my 2 weeks, she said, "Don't tell anyone you're leaving." So, I said okay, and walked out of her office and announced to all my co-workers, "Hey, guess what everyone? You're all getting pizza." And they instantly knew what had happened. She was very unhappy and I felt great. I served out the rest of my 2 weeks and she never spoke to me again. Now to the comments. In the US Navy, food is fairly crappy on board ships. You always know when any bad news comes up because the galley is serving surf and turf that night. The time we had surf and turf but didn't get any bad news was almost worse. Just kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. And the XO invites you into his office to see how you are doing. Changed my shift around on a whim without notice. Once changed my schedule for the next day after I had left without telling me, then wrote me up when I didn't show up on time. Time to start calling every 6 hours to make sure your shift hasn't changed, including one at 3 a.m. just to be safe. A lady I worked with only worked 2 or 3 shifts a week and one of them was always the day of, or after the schedule was posted. She would simply copy down the schedule and initial beside her shifts. If someone changed the shifts, the newly printed copy wouldn't have her initials on it. Where I work, we have a theater-style popcorn popper in the break room. When they're about to fire someone, they start popping popcorn about 8 a.m. so we can all get popcorn on our 9 a.m. break. We usually have a good idea who is about to get sacked. Lamau, imagine learning that popcorn or pizza is a harbinger of doom. I worked for a company that went through a series of layoffs. After each set of layoffs, they would order pizza for the remaining employees. We started calling them pizza funerals. I once quit a job and was told not to tell anyone I was leaving. Like your workplace, there had been a large exodus and they wanted to keep it quiet. So, I didn't say anything, and there was never an announcement that I was leaving. People didn't know I quit until I started my new job and changed my LinkedIn. I got some very strange messages. Apparently, this caused quite a few issues as no one else knew how to do my job. OP replied, "That's amazing. Makes you wonder why nobody in charge thought that might be a problem. Because they're ducking dolts. If there's a large exodus at any given time, either there's a budget problem, or the management is ducking dolts." I had a boss who hated me. I gave my 4 weeks notice and I became very vocal about her decisions if I disagreed with them. I had nothing to lose. 2 days into my 4 weeks notice period, she said that day was my last day and I got 4 weeks paid out without having to work them. In tech we call it gardening leave. Hope you had fun in your free paid time. It was great. I had another job lined up to start 4 weeks later but called them and started 3 weeks later. I enjoy what I so for work and was excited to start my new job. Had a little staycation and went to the beach a lot, played video games. I guess she never had an exit interview with you to find out why you were leaving. I take it the pizza is bought after the employee left. OP replied, No, actually she almost always did it that day or the next. Such a messed up workplace. So, it is a farewell pizza. Rather strange. During World War II, my grandfather was the radio operator on a ship. He knew things before the captain did and wasn't allowed to reveal any of his insider knowledge. Whenever they received orders to return to shore, my grandfather would shave his facial hair off to let his shipmates know what he wasn't allowed to tell them. Total bro move. This story of legendary bro code history was brought to you by Gillette. Please buy our products again. My friend's work does a goodbye pizza lunch at a local place on their last day, and they have a history of not telling anyone about someone's notice before the lunch is scheduled. So, to mess with his co-workers, he occasionally suggests to their boss about going out to the local pizza place for lunch as a group. Then he watches them all silently panic, wondering if he is leaving. It's actually quite hilarious. I just felt like pizza today. I'm not quitting. For now. I always tell my colleagues what I'm about to do before I hand my notice in. You can't be saying I already have when your manager asks you not to tell anyone. They won't be able to spin this one if I get marched off the premises, as often happens to software engineers. Whoa, she cracked your code. But he felt great. At my shop, we always have pizza when somebody leaves. If we have pizza on your last day, you were somebody that everyone liked. If we have pizza the day after you leave, you weren't liked so much. One place I worked had a tradition of gone parties. The day after someone particularly heinous left would see a full keg and pizza for all. Was it Pizza by Alfredo, or Alfredo's Pizza Cafe? I hope it's Alfredo's Pizza Cafe, because otherwise it's just a hot circle of garbage. Dejectedly, the Pizza by Alfredo guy is here. You don't have to say it like that, I said it normal. Where I live it is illegal to change shifts without ample prior notice. Is it not the same everywhere? OP replied. This was a while ago, at least where I live it wasn't the law until a few years ago. She only did it so she could write me up, but I refused to sign the write-up and it didn't really go anywhere after that. I had a manager who used to try the same thing, so I photocopied the schedule. Next time he tried writing me up, I faxed my copy, the reposted/updated change, and his write-up form to HR in FT. Worth. Never had any further issues with no-notice schedule changes after that. A single toxic person in management can cause a talent exodus that brings down a once flourishing company. I've witnessed it at numerous workplaces. I had a former colleague that was this misogynistic, Jesus-loving hypocrite. When I first started working for that company, he had already quit once for a higher salary somewhere else, then returned for an even higher salary. He was getting paid more than most managers and spent most of his day doing work for his personal business. But he was a pro schmoozer and had the owner wrapped around his finger, so he was able to get away with it. He quit, a second time, for a management position somewhere else, and within a couple of months was fired after triggering a mass exodus when he threatened to replace an entire department if they didn't do things the way he liked them to be done. They all just stood up, said good luck, and walked out, along with people from other departments. It's a small industry, so word got around very quickly, and months later we heard he was still looking for a new job. He even had the nerve to go over the heads of his former boss and asked the owner for his old job back. The owner refused, and my former colleague eventually had to create his own business because not one company would hire him. We later found out he had been approaching young women who hadn't yet completed their schooling. Not for any perverted reason, but because he thought so little of them and thought they'd be dumb enough to agree to working for less than minimum wage. Word got out about that little stunt too, and he couldn't find anyone willing to work for him. I once had a boss who wore a certain styled black tie the day he fired someone. We started realizing it after the fourth or fifth person. One day he came in wearing it, the DM came in, and they called me into the office to promote me. Bastards. I got into work one morning. First thing I got a message from my boss: I need to speak with you in my office. Well, duck. I go over, there's someone else in there, they make the go away gesture. I go back to my desk to a new message of I'm busy with so and so, come back in 30. This happens about 5 times until 2 p.m. when they ask about an update on a project I was working on, like thanks for the free heart attack all day. Morale was very low, and whenever anyone quit, she would buy pizza for everyone. I worked at a place where the manager's habit was to take everyone to lunch at the zoo, then on the way back to the office, they would tell you they were terminating you. We took to calling it getting thrown to the lions.